Hey guys, it's Sam, and today I'm talking about the worst books I read in 2022. I actually only have 6 books for this. I didn't rate a ton of stuff super horribly, 1 and 2 stars. I will say the funny thing about this is 4 out of the 6 books are books we read for book club. What that's telling me, what I've mentioned a few places now, but is definitely a thing that I will do for 2023, I need to DNF book club books I'm not enjoying because it just brings me down overall. Should I put these in order for how horrible they are? No, they're all horrible in their own way. First is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. You guys are probably sick of hearing about this because it's one of the first books that I read this year, and so it's popped up in a lot of like mid-year reading things, whatever. But this was so bad. This is the first book in a YA fantasy, I say that with air quotes, it's part of the reason why it was so bad, duology that's supposed to be a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but it's kind of not. There were so many things that were wrong with this. This had a fantasy element that you could have taken out and changed nothing about the book, and I don't like fantasy where it like doesn't really actually impact anything. The explanation for that fantastical element was 0, and it didn't make any sense and like was sort of unresolved by the end of the story, and again, just you could have taken it out and it was pretty much the same book. The Romeo and Juliet element, which is the part that I thought I was going to really enjoy. By the way, all of these books I read thinking that I would enjoy with one exception, but I wanted to like all of these books. I didn't want to dislike them. The part about this I thought I'd really enjoy was the Romeo and Juliet aspect. This is actually taking place years after they had met, and we sort of get flashes back to their original relationship, but it's not enough. And honestly, like this story sort of should have started back then so that we got to see that. I think the duology would have worked if we had one book that was them back then and the second book was maybe this, you know, without the fantasy element that was bad. Maybe that would have worked better. I have a hard time believing these days, and this is a me thing, that teenagers who are 17, 16 years old are like the top of a mafia family. Like, I just don't buy it. And I didn't even really necessarily buy their relationship, the miscommunication there. Like it was all a mess. It was all a mess. So this was something that I really wanted to love and just ended up being really disappointing. I think this came in at around 2 stars. The one book that was a bad book that I read this year, but that I expected to be a bad book, so I'm not as mad at it as I am at other things, is Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. We read this for book club, but honestly, even though this is one of the books that we all rated the lowest, it still wasn't like disappointing to us because we all kind of expected this. This is the first book in a adult erotica, like sci-fi erotica series with alien romances. So a bunch of these women are abducted, human women, are abducted from Earth by this other very rapey alien race. That ship crashes and they are saved by big blue alien himbo men who happen to have the perfect anatomy for human female pleasure, and they are all about breeding and finding their mates who happen to be human women. It's not explained, it's fine. And this is just, it's erotica. The thing that kind of knocked it down for me was that it was so basic and that there were parts of the story that like, it was kind of towing the line of where it wasn't kind of being eccentric fantastical enough, and it was going too hard into realism. Like she talks about sometimes like how much they stink and like having to pee and whatever, which is like, yes, but if you're going into this, like you sort of don't want to hear it if you're going for escapism. The rapey aliens that are at the beginning of the story are described as just having like basketball heads. It's very weird, like the writing quality there, but like the relationship, fine. I don't love erotica. It's not a genre that I really read. I don't really care about sex scenes, but I guess they were like decently written. But it was just like so basic, and then I felt like it ended. Like it was very short, which is fine because it wasn't like super well written, but a lot of things just like obviously weren't explained. But now it's like a 17 book series or spin-off series, whatever. Would I continue this? I don't plan to, but like if someone was like, you have to read the next book, or if I want to read an alien porn romance, I guess I would. I have friends that deeply love it. Like I'm not opposed to it, but it's still one of the worst things, like objectively, that I read quality-wise. Next is probably the book that does make me the maddest, potentially, and that is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This book is such steaming hot garbage. Before anyone says anything, I know that she has said that it's like, you know, she wants to go back and re-edit it for the 10-year edition, the anniversary edition. She's going to go back and like re-edit it, but again, I don't know how much you can do with something that's that bad. Like how much can you really change without just rewriting the whole thing which I don't think is what she's doing. And then she's gonna rewrite the rest of the series too, like, I don't know. So I probably won't reread that, I'm just done. But this is the first book in a adult urban fantasy series that follows a character who has, oh God, I don't even remember now because it's been so long. Does she have dream magic? I think she has like dream magic or something. She has like a very elusive magic. She's part of this like crime syndicate of magic users, but then she gets abducted by sort of like a vampiric type of people, and there's this, man, this is so bad and I'm remembering barely any of it because my brain was like, but one of the like lead guys that she's sort of attached to, he's sort of in charge of her, is a very angsty Edward Cullen archetype, but like a bad boy, and they have this like budding relationship. It's so bad. One, it's so like post-Twilight book, like you can just tell it's like from that era. All of the world building is info dumped to her by other people who are just telling her things. She does a bunch of dumb shit. There is no explanation for why these people would even like each other. It's just bad. Like there was parts about, we get sort of like flashbacks to her and her like crime found family, which could have been slightly more interesting, but even that I didn't really care about. It's just bad. And there's no piece that sustains it enough for me to be like, well, this was kind of good and it gets better. And a bunch of people said the series gets better, and I don't believe you. I don't believe you for me. I just don't think it would get better for me. And I wanted to love this. Like, I put this book off for so long because I thought I was going to love it, and then we actually changed the book club book we were gonna read that month to this because we were all pretty certain we were gonna enjoy it on some level. It was so bad. I think this was the one-star book of this year. Everything else was 2. This was horrible. Then we have The Book of Night by Holly Black. Another one that I was kind of skeptical of this one. Like I was like, okay, I've liked Holly Black in the past, but she's not like the strongest for me, whatever. But this is the first book in a adult fantasy duology, like a contemporary fantasy, following a thief who, or like a former thief at least, who is hired to acquisition a book of night, which is supposed to be like a book of dark magic. Things get all messed up and there's something connected to her boyfriend who doesn't have a shadow. There's a lot of like shadow magic. So her boyfriend doesn't have a shadow. That's very weird. And everything kind of goes from there. Again, it's kind of a convoluted story for how short it is. The most interesting part of the story is actually this boyfriend who's not the main character and who isn't in it for a lot of it, but I would have liked to have seen more of him. Overall, like this book didn't feel like it was giving what it was supposed to give as far as like the synopsis and like how it was advertised. It also wasn't initially really advertised as a duology, so a lot of people thought it was a standalone and then it turned out to be a duology, and that was announced like right before it came out. It was just kind of messy. Would I potentially read the second book? I guess, but like I'm not really super compelled to. I think I gave this like a 3 stars. It's probably jumped down to a 2 in my feelings as time has passed because I don't remember a lot of it. And it was just like kind of boring and slow and convoluted and not giving what I thought it was going to give. And I don't really care about the like relationship dynamics and like the characters. So yeah, it's just bad. And the last 2 books are both in 2 urban fantasy series that I ended up DNFing throughout the year. So first is Ultimately Prey by Rachel Vincent. This is the 4th book in the Shifter series, 4 out of 6. This follows Werecats. And this has been an up and down roller coaster for me where I really loved the first book. I hated the second book. I tried the third book earlier this year, I think, and gave that one like a 3, and then read this one and I was like, no, I actually don't like these, and this was a 2 again. These books are too long for what they are. They're incredibly repetitive as far as the plot. They are very meandering, so they're long and then like nothing happens. They'll talk about like the food they're eating and whatever. It's an incredibly misogynistic society, which is on purpose, but you'd think that there'd be some more progress on that as like the story goes on, or her pushing back more. But also she gets herself into dumb, stupid situations, and so a lot of the problems in Faith as main character's life are totally her fault, and so that's very frustrating to read. And then there is sort of like this love triangle thing going on, but I like the guy that I know she's not gonna pick. So it's just like all around disaster. The 5th book also has as a magical element Thunderbirds, which I do not think that she is going to handle as an author well. It's gonna be incredibly dated, and Thunderbirds are a Native American creature, and I do not think this woman is going to be able to handle that material at all. So yeah, I'm giving up on this, and I gave this one 2 stars, and I was so frustrated, and I just wish I would have left book 1 where it was in my feelings, but I thought I was gonna enjoy it, just even as like a mediocre urban fantasy series, and it was so bad. And finally is Blood Fever by Karen Marie Moning. This is the second book in the Fever series. This is a series that I was like kind of content to continue reading, but the second book was so bad. This is about a character who goes to Dublin after her sister is murdered very mysteriously and figures out that there's some connection to like the Fae and her connection to the Fae and powers, and there's this mysterious man named Barons who runs a magic shop who is some kind of magical creature and we don't know what, and she encounters a lot of just like Fae and other magical creatures and blah. And the second book was just like bad. Again, I read this I think towards the beginning of the year and probably that's when I DNF'd it. I DNF'd the series, I finished this book. The romance is getting more romancy because in the first book he's not really a romantic lead, this Barons guy, but it's getting slowly more towards that in this book, and I'm also kind of like, why? Because I don't really see like where that's coming from. Again, she's another character that kind of makes a bunch of dumb decisions, and you're again like, why? Like, stop doing that. If you know how dangerous this world is, like, stop running face first into it when you have no magical abilities or fighting abilities whatsoever. And I just got to the point where I was like, there's a few threads that I kind of care about, but I could honestly just Wikipedia them, which I did. And now I know those things and I don't need to know anything else. I wasn't really enjoying the story or the writing and didn't really care about the characters. So there's other urban fantasy series that I want to read and that I am currently reading and really enjoying. And I was sick of giving my time to this series and the Shifter series. So that's another one that was awful this year. Yeah, overall, not a ton of worst books, right? Like 6 out of 100 books is really not bad. So for that reason, I'm also gonna do a video on my most disappointing reads of this year that are ranging from like 3 to 4 stars, but were just maybe not as high as I thought that they were going to be, not giving what I thought they were going to give, etc. I have way more books on that list. I think I have about 10 on that list, so that is a little bit varied, because I don't think any of these are big surprises for anybody. That's gonna be a slightly more surprising list. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.